Now, one of the ways we're being told to save the planet and save ourselves is by active travel, a jargon way of saying walk or cycle more. Campaigners point out the Scottish Government officially wants to see 1 in 10 journeys made on a bike by 2020. The Transport Minister is heading for Amsterdam to see how they've managed to make the bicycle the normal mode of travel there. Our correspondent David Miller got there before him and filed this report.
Commuting by bike. It's quick, cheap, good for your health and good for the environment too. But a lack of dedicated bike infrastructure means cycling in Scotland can sometimes be dangerous. Very dangerous. Things are very different on the other side of the North Sea. In the Netherlands, segregated bike paths make cycling, well, child's play.
There are a lot of cycle paths, yes.
Do the kids enjoy coming to school on the bike?
Yes, and my son, he's cycling himself.
How old's he?
6 years, and yeah, 6 years old.
I've never had any serious problems with biking. Of course, the risk when you get hit is higher, but I've actually never heard of someone being hit with kids on their bike.
Here in the centre of Amsterdam, around 60% of all journeys are made by bike. The figure back home in Scotland is between 1 and 2%. Amsterdam's success hasn't happened by accident. It's the result of decades of work by the City Council here. So what are the lessons for us?
This is a new part of Amsterdam. It used to be water, but they made islands and built...
It all comes at a cost, of course, but Dutch cycle campaigners say investment in bike routes actually saves cash.
It saves a lot of money for public transport, which is for every kilometre much more expensive for the city than cycling. It saves a lot of money for measures against air pollution, and it saves a lot of money for health care, because in the Netherlands and Denmark there's less obesitas than in all the surrounding countries.
Meet Dave Brennan. He's our intrepid cycle commuter who films his daily journey to work. Today, Dave has traded the mean streets of Glasgow for Amsterdam to put the city's cycling infrastructure to the test. This bridge, for cyclists and pedestrians only, cost more than £6 million. Dave likes what he sees here.
You can see that the numbers of people in Amsterdam that cycle is absolutely huge, and the reason that they do is because the roads are designed to make it safe and to feel safe for them. You see small children out cycling on the roads, some of them themselves, and it's just something that would not happen in Scotland, in Edinburgh or Glasgow. They've just looked at the roads, they've thought, how can we design this to make it feel safe? And it does feel safe for everybody. And it takes a bit of money and political will to get there, but cities like Amsterdam and others like it show that it is possible.
But does pedal power equal political power in Scotland? At Holyrood, the Scottish Government insists it has to balance competing demands.
What we are actually involved in is modernising Scotland's transport infrastructure. It's my view, for decades it's been underinvested in. So, for example, we don't have motorways between our cities, which we should have in a modern developed country. So there's a number of things, if you take into account the road projects, which are more contentious for cyclists, but we have to improve the infrastructure around Aberdeen. We had to do the M74, in my view. We need to have resilience crossing the Forth as well. So these things, they can't wait.
It can feel like an uphill slog for cycle campaigners, so are there grounds for optimism?
We do have a national plan, which no other country in the United Kingdom has got, and that plan aims to get us to a position where we have 10% of trips by bike by 2020. And crucially, we're beginning to see a movement among people. People themselves, particularly the Pedal on Parliament demonstration. 3,000 people demonstrated in Edinburgh, wanting better facilities, safer facilities for walking and cycling.
Protesters will pedal on Parliament again in May. Budgets are under pressure, but these campaigners say the human cost of serious and fatal accidents involving cyclists must be taken into account by our politicians.
Well, I'm joined now from Edinburgh by Chris Oliver, chairman of the Cyclist Touring Club Scotland. Here in Glasgow is the motoring journalist, Alan Douglas. Chris Oliver, actually, just something I was thinking watching that film there. Can you think of any structure, like a bridge, anywhere in Scotland that is specifically devoted to cycling in the way that we saw in the film there?
I don't think there's anything that has been specifically for cycling. There's a few bridges across rivers. I think there's a new one up across the Dee. But there's not enough bridges and infrastructure like there is in Holland.
Right. Why do you think that is?
I think really we're a long way behind Holland. They've got 40 years ahead of us, and they've built their cycleways and they've integrated them with city planning and active travel planning, and they've thought about things and they've invested significant amounts of money over the years. And for Scotland to catch up, I think they need to really invest a lot more money. We'd be looking to see at least 5% of the transport budget spent on cycling across Scotland. The transport budget in Scotland is something like about £2 billion a year, and we'd like to see the 1% we currently get increased to at least 5%. In some cities like Edinburgh, we already get 5%, and we're quite privileged, and things are a little better in Edinburgh, but it doesn't reflect the rest of Scotland. We really need to move on. The Minister and Transport Scotland, I think, are behind the wave. It's a bit late. You know, they've got to move on.
What do you make of this, Alan Douglas?
Well, I was thinking about the bridges. I mean, just yards from where we are here, there are two bridges which are pretty well used by cyclists and pedestrians. They're certainly not for cars.
Yes, so they're not built for them.
They're not built for them, but there are plenty of opportunities for cyclists to go where they want to go without having to have this extra investment.
Right, so fair point. But what about this argument that we ought to spend a fortune?
Well, I think we already do spend money. I think something like £6 million was announced last year for cycle pathways around Scotland. There are already cycleways around Scotland that aren't even used. I've come down the A9 where there's a fantastic cycle pathway down the side of the A9, north of Perth, and I've seen cyclists on the road itself. Now, if cyclists have an argument, if they want more investment, then they've got to use the facilities that are there, rather than ignore some of the facilities that are there already.
Is that true, Chris Oliver?
Well, I think that's figures from Sustrans, the Sustainable Transport Organisation, show that cycleways were increased in usage by 18% last year. There's a lot more cycling going on. We need safer cycling ways as well around our towns.
So you want particular treatment? You want special treatment then, do you? I mean, why don't you use the roads? Nobody's stopping you cycling. If you want to cycle, go out and cycle. You don't need to have your own specific tracks just to go cycling.
I think there's evidence to say that segregated cycleways are safer, and if you produce segregated cycleways, then more people cycle. I think if we stay with our current level of investment, people will be afraid of cycling, as they are in some cities, many cities around Scotland, and won't cycle. If we stay as we are, there won't be more cycling.
Aren't we just missing something pretty basic here that's different between Scotland and Amsterdam, is that particularly in the winter and the autumn and much of the spring, it just rains all the time and people don't want to get on a bike, and if it's not raining in places like Edinburgh there's a gale blowing, and it's just a different climate, and that's the reason they have, and it's hilly. That's the reason, and Amsterdam's flat as a pancake, so it's not an accident that they get on the bikes and we don't.
Well, flatness does help, but if we look at Scandinavia and Copenhagen, that's a cold country and it's very icy.
No, it's not the cold, it's the fact it's raining all the time and it's windy.
Well, I think there's also a cultural
element. The weather's adverse.
There's a culture of cycling in Holland, which there isn't really here. There is a growing use of cycles in Scotland, I accept that, but I think when it comes to extra investment, you've got to take your place along with everybody else. I mean, do we want more cycleways or more nurses or healthcare or welfare?
All right, we'll have to leave it there. My apologies for that. To be continued. Very quick look after that.